The trials of Karen Read have become one of the most watched legal dramas in recent memory, centered around the tragic death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. On a snowy January night in 2022, O'Keefe was found unresponsive in the snow outside a home in Canton, Massachusetts. Prosecutors allege that Read, his girlfriend, struck him with her SUV in a fit of rage after a night of drinking and left him to die. The case quickly escalated beyond a typical vehicular homicide. Read's defense claims she's being framed and that O'Keefe was beaten inside the house by others, suggesting a conspiracy and cover-up involving law enforcement. The courtroom has seen explosive testimony, conflicting expert opinions, and divided the public, many of whom believe Read is a scapegoat. Her first trial ended in a mistrial, setting the stage for a second round filled with even more scrutiny. As the retrial unfolds, questions linger. Was it a tragic accident fueled by alcohol and emotion, or something far darker, hidden behind a badge?
Live from downtown Dedham, Massachusetts, the site of the Karen Read retrial, this is Closing Arguments. And now here is your host, Vinnie Politan.
Welcome. We are live in Dedham, Massachusetts, just down the block from the retrial of the century, which is taking place. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Karen Read. It's a murder trial. It doesn't get any more serious. But this is actually a murder retrial. Now, how do you know you're covering a big case when you're working at Court TV? Well, there's one way that you can tell that it's a huge case. When you're here where the trial is happening, and absolutely nothing happens during the day. Zero, nothing, no testimony, no evidence, nothing happens. And social media is on fire. And that's what happened today, folks. I want to read some of the comments from some of the viewers on Court TV's Facebook page after today's big news that nothing is happening. Okay, you've got Grace Holler. The defense needs an extra day to come up with a new theory. Kelly McGarvey says, Karen is sick today and breaking down. She looks even more frail than before. Just do the right thing and plead guilty like you should. Christy Kalidi Hill, could you imagine if there was a plea deal? Jane Kenneman, I heard Karen was sick. And then Suzanne Gill, who is saying, Chloe threatened to take the stand. Folks are all over the place. Some are cracking jokes, but everyone's wondering what is happening. That's why we are bringing in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who is joining us live. Matt, great to see you tonight.
Always nice to see you.
All right. This
day.
is like Seinfeld Day. It was a day about nothing, but it's never about nothing in this case.
There was actually a lot that happened today, but behind the scenes and how much we actually are going to learn, still TBD is what Karen Read likes to say.
So it was postponed today. It was just canceled?
It was canceled, and that happened. We got official word from the court at around 8:30 this morning. The court PIO, the public information officer, sent out an email, mass email, saying court is canceled for the day for various reasons, you know, and they never gave a specific reason, but through my source reporting, various sources, and also other outlets here in town, they have their sources. They were reporting the same thing, that Karen Read was not feeling well today. So it was a last-minute decision, and she didn't actually come to the courthouse. But when I arrived to the courthouse today, I mean, you had the O'Keefe family. They were there, ready. They were just getting in their cars. The troopers were escorting them. So right away, I could see them.
So this is a last-minute thing?
Last-minute thing. All the other troopers were outside the courthouse. The prosecutors were there at the courthouse. Everybody was ready to go. But, I mean, if the defendant is not well, then testimony cannot resume.
Okay, so you've been in court every day this week, and you've seen everyone. Did anyone seem under the weather?
You know what, that's hard to tell right now because, I mean, I had to buy allergy medicine earlier today, right? It is pollen covering everything around this tiny courthouse. Right. The windows are open all day, so, I mean, yeah, there's a juror that coughs very loudly every single day. There are other people that, everyone's close together. It's like being on an airplane. So if one person is sick, then maybe other people will.
Because they're in the tiny courtroom.
Yeah.
They've got the huge courtroom where Sacco and Vanzetti were tried years ago. I did not cover that trial.
Are you sure?
That was back in the, last century. But they chose the small one so everyone's on top of each other, almost literally. So what did you, You didn't notice anyone? Or just
I didn't notice anyone that looked sick, but I mean, people are sneezing, they're blowing their nose occasionally.
I was outdoors today. We're going to show you.
You're feeling okay though, right?
Yeah, we're going to show you tomorrow what we did today, which was really interesting. We actually found a home, thanks to you, very similar to 34 Fairview. So tomorrow night we'll take a tour of that and show you what it looks like inside there relative to what we've been learning in this case. But let's talk about what did happen today. So it's canceled, but then it wasn't canceled.
I mean, the attorneys are always working. As you know, you're a former prosecutor. There is no day off. And these attorneys...
That's why I retired from practicing law, Matt, right?
Before the gag order, you know, the attorneys had told me that they're working till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning in their various war rooms. Again, you have a special prosecutor here. He was at the courthouse. He was getting ready for his witnesses. But there was a Zoom call that was not open to the media. We know about it. The court did tell us that it did happen. All parties were present. And they were going over scheduling, probably talking about the various witnesses that were supposed to take the stand. We expect the niece and nephew that John O'Keefe basically adopted after his sister and brother-in-law had passed. And they're expected to testify yet again. Court has informed us that there will be no cameras. Right. I have a ticket inside, so I'm going to be doing old school pen and paper and reporting back to you and to our viewers at home of what they say. And then we might also hear from Dr. Scortibello, who is the medical examiner who determined that it was undetermined cause of death. So she's still going to take the stand for the prosecution's case in chief. And then that'll be very interesting testimony. But we are winding down. I mean, by all accounts, Judge Beverly Cannoni has indicated to the jury that we are on schedule, if not ahead of schedule. And
I've been feeling that all along, that things are moving much more quickly than last year.
But there's going to be a rebuttal case. We didn't see that last year.
Right. Okay, so final question. In that Zoom, do we know if they were discussing the health? And whether or not this is going to be a prolonged illness, if it's just a...
We are expecting, by all accounts, with the court staff that I spoke with today, just a few moments ago, they said that we are expecting testimony to resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., so let's just hope.
Okay. Matt Johnson, thank you so much. All right, what does this all mean? Let's bring in our special guests, our legal insiders. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski, Jr., who I understand is almost as good in the courtroom as Joseph Krowski Sr., who is an absolute legend here. Also with us, Margaret McLean, former prosecutor and host of It's a Crime with Margaret McLean. And also joining us, criminal defense attorney Peter Ellikin is with us. I've known Peter a long time, and a lot of it through Court TV, covering cases up here in Massachusetts. You're always there, whether you're in the courtroom or with me, which is great.
Yeah, what does Woody Allen say? 85% of life is showing up?
Yeah, he's there. And also with us, a big Karen Reed supporter who's helped us a lot in all this, Nick Rocco. Great to see you, Nick. All right, so let's start here with, do we know what happened today? Do we know? Is anything on the record about what happened? And if a defendant, and we've had reports, everyone's reporting that they believe Karen Reed was sick. What does that mean? So how do they deal with that? And is there a line where, okay, we have to delay this trial if it becomes more serious?
Sure. So the information that was relayed today to the court that we have heard from secondary sources is that the defendant, Karen Reed, was sick. Whether or not she is sick is really none of our business. I presume they went to the sidebar because they were discussing private, privileged, health-related information to the defendant. Look, there's been a lot of speculation as to motivations why the defense would want to delay this trial. I think there's enough conspiracy theories and enough innuendo and speculation already replete in this trial. So, look, we have to, if Karen Reed is truly ill, we just have to wish her well, get better, and hopefully the trial goes on. I will say in a trial of this long, you typically stack your witnesses, so you know, you can foresee that there are going to be evidentiary issues, issues with witnesses, issues with the court, so you can accommodate a day or two delay. Beyond that, then the judge is going to start worrying about those jurors and not knowing with certainty what their schedule is.
Yeah, right. You know, it is very regrettable because this Hank Brennan, the prosecutor, was really moving this at a rapid clip. I mean, he's practically getting whiplash here. This hopefully will just be kind of a big nothing. If there's a day that court doesn't happen and then they resume the next day, and it would probably be good if the judge kind of explained, because not go into detail, exact specifics, but just say there was an illness, and that's why we...
Because you have to explain it to the jury as well. But the thing that happens with with this case, and we've got a live studio audience here, everyone is wondering what was going on today. And there was this explosion on social media, Nick, which everyone was speculating. Some people were accusing Karen Reed of things. And, I don't know what the truth is, but I think the bottom line is the public always is going to have an opinion when anything happens in this case.
Yeah, so, I mean, the truth is she was sick. She has severe medical conditions. She has been fighting for her life for 3 years now and has not missed one day. Last trial, every pre-trial hearing, she's been in court fighting every day against this corrupt system. So now you have one day where she's really not feeling well, and you see the internet explode, like you said. You have, reporters claiming that she's hungover, or, she was out at the Celtics game, or Alan and her were doing things at a bar, and it's come down to a point where everyone has an opinion in this case. But most of the internet was wrong today. Until it came out to the point where she was sick, then you have people saying, oh, well, she's only sick today because the niece was supposed to testify. No, she has medical conditions, and she was sick, and she is feeling better now.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Nick, because, think about it. If you have the stomach bug, or if you have food poisoning, you can't get out of bed. So I actually do feel sorry for Karen Reed in that respect.
It's a terrible thing to be accused of something without any basis in fact. So to that extent...
Are you being sarcastic?
No, it is true. And to that extent, a lot of these civilian witnesses can relate to Karen Reed for the first time because there were allegations made about her that she was feigning illness today. People were making that allegation without any basis in fact. You can kind of see how someone like Jen McCabe might feel. Well, while we're on the medical issue...
There was an investigation done.
While we're on the medical issue, I just want to correct the record. The medical examiner did not state uncertainty as to cause of death, method of death, which is a very distinguishable thing, just so we're clear.
She also said that this was not consistent with being struck by a vehicle either.
No, she didn't say that. Method of death is something that is typically not opined in because it's a jury question. It's a question of fact for the jury, so that was much ado about nothing, like a lot of these evidentiary issues.
So as this case is moving along, and I think we all agree, I think, like you said, things are moving much more quickly. In a retrial, if things are moving much more quickly, is there an advantage to one side or the other? Why is it moving more quickly?
Well, I think that's because you have Hank Brennan. I mean, he's streamlined this case, and I think he's done a wonderful job with the witnesses, and he's not called, like Lally called all these witnesses who were at the bar last year, at the Waterfall and McCarthy's, but here he's streamlining it, and he's sticking to the facts and the science and the data.
I agree that this case has been the first trial was really kind of, it went so long, and you had all these extra witnesses. You had twice as many witnesses on the list as you do this time. And some lawyers do that. They kind of ask anything and everything and see if anything sticks to the wall. You throw it out there, and that bores the jury, and it goes on for extra weeks. And Hank Brennan is doing a superlative job in going in like a laser, like get in and out.
But let me ask you this, from the jury's perspective. I'm always concerned about the jury, right? The jury's the one who has to determine what happened here. They need to figure out what the truth is. They're supposed to tell us what the truth is. So if we're cutting out witnesses and they're getting less information, are they more or less likely to get to the truth?
Well, last year, I felt that some of the witnesses were, it was just repetitive, and I thought it diluted some of the good testimony.
What, if anything, was repetitive?
Yeah. Well, every single person that was in that house should be on the witness stand. I mean, you have a dead police officer on the lawn at 34 Fairview Road, and you're going to hide the homeowners from the jury, or potentially, the kids as well. They were in that house. Every single person that was in that house should be on the witness stand. The lead investigator should be on the witness stand for the prosecution if they did nothing wrong. But there's a reason why Hank Brennan is not going to put them there.
Sure.
Hank Brennan has an ethical obligation to prove his case fairly. He is doing a nuts and bolts prosecution. He's presenting the evidence and the witnesses he needs to prove the case. He is not ethically obligated to chase a wild, fanciful conspiracy theory.
What happens?
The same conspiracy theory rejected by the federal government that investigated this case and vetted these allegations.
Does the jury hold it against them? Does the jury hold it against them? No, because the
jury's not supposed to know about it, right? Unless they've been looking at social media.
Folks?
We'll let the defense call the folks. Call them folks.
Every single one of the defense experts, every single one of them. They got one to be kept out, Michael Easter. Hank Brennan wanted Arca out because that destroys his case. He wanted everyone out.
Hank Brennan wanted Arca out because Arca misled the court
they didn't.
with their relationship
because
with
they were
the
paid?
defense. They paid they were paid $23,000
not by the defense.
in 2024. Yes, they were.
Yes,
the bill was paid.
Right.
And then in January of 2025, the representation was that Arca was not hired or paid for by the defense.
But the bottom line
But they had been paid for last summer.
The bottom line is that they did they were hired to do an independent investigation from the feds. They weren't on anybody's payroll. And when
That's not true.
And when they were with the feds, but they weren't on people from either side. And when they testified at the first trial, they basically went along with their everything with their report and their investigation, and so that was all independent, and that really was very powerful.
That was not independent. They were. Go ahead.
Emailed. Yeah. Why did they email Ellen Jackson's firm saying, "Well, this is what I'd like to say on the stand"?
But they still presented the exact same thing before they had anything to do. Before they spoke to Jackson, their report was done way before the trial for the feds. And they basically testified and did not vary or do anything different than
the federal
anything
investigation limited the information that was made available to them. They were not presented the full discovery in the case, which basically renders their opinion invalid. And they conceded that point. They now have all the discovery. So we'll see what they bring to the table.
But the bottom line, when I spoke to the juror who was speaking out after the trial, and I asked him about the Arca experts, you know what he said?
He discredited them.
He completely discounted their testimony because the jury had no idea where these people came from.
Right.
And that's because the judge and the court did not permit the jury to know the truth of where they came from. So we're bringing people in from the public, right? These jurors, they get a notice. They don't sign up for it, although I think some folks here might sign up for it to be on the jury. But they come in and they've got to figure this out. And we're limiting information from them so much so that an expert witness was discounted, not because of their background, but because nobody would let them know where they came from.
What's the probative value of the FBI hiring them? There is none.
Then at least, no, but it's the truth.
No, answer that question.
All
What's
right.
the probative value of the FBI hiring Arca?
It goes to the credibility of their testimony. It's like where they went to school, how they were trained, how they came to their conclusion,
That came in.
who hired them.
The FBI can't vouch and bolster the credibility of an expert witness. Their credibility rises and falls on its own. Their experience, their training, their information
in reality,
was put there.
Their credibility was discounted. Their testimony was completely discounted because the court prevented them from telling the jury, who has to figure this all out, why they even did what they did. Like if I'm a juror and these people are giving me, where are they from? Are they from some insurance company or something? I don't like insurance companies. I don't want to pay attention to them.
But that's not in the evidence. Nothing to do with an insurance company. It was in the record. They're independent.
Right, because
you looked at this evidence, give your opinion.
They're claiming a vehicle struck John O'Keefe. Car insurance would potentially hire Arca so the defendant wouldn't have to pay out.
Their life experience and common sense, which they're supposed to do. I hate when we hide the truth from the jury.
That's what they're doing.
Why do we do that?
That's not hiding the truth. Hiding the truth might be failing to disclose that you have signal communications with Arca, that you have 107 different communications with Arca, that you paid them $23,000.
He's starting to sound like senior now. You're on fire right now.
But hold on, you keep going back to the payment. You keep going back to the payment. But the issue is they did not receive this bill, nor did they know they were getting the bill until the trial was over.
The court found a willful violation of the ethical obligation of the attorneys based on that.
They did an independent investigation that the FBI had them do, and there was no talk about being hired by anybody at that point when they did the report. And the report they basically presented.
At the end of the day, it didn't impact anything because the jury wasn't told where they came from. All right, I know where these guys came from. They are ready for the next hour. We are live in Dedham, Massachusetts. Our coverage of the retrial of the century continues.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, Let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Is Karen Reed a killer girlfriend
She's guilty.
or the scapegoat in an elaborate cover-up?
Karen Reed was free! We know who did it.
The Karen Reed murder retrial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Did you, in your mind, in your opinion, after having read those texts, find a motive for Brian Higgins to perhaps want to confront John O'Keefe because of jealousy?
If you're asking for my opinion is that he would need to confront Mr. O'Keefe. Mr. O'Keefe was not the one pursuing Mr. Higgins. It was your client that was pursuing Mr. Higgins.
Did you pull the tape at the Waterfall and review the tape as we did here in court?
That happened, yes.
Do you remember a circumstance on that tape where Brian Higgins pulled his arm away and looked past Chris Albert over toward the bar, which is where John O'Keefe was standing? Did you see that?
I do remember you pointing that out, but we couldn't tell him who exactly he was looking at based on the video.
Welcome back. We're live in Dedham, Massachusetts, down the street from the courthouse where the retrial of the century is taking place. What you just heard there was testimony from Sergeant Buchanan talking about a surveillance video at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. And this all concerns potential tension between John O'Keefe and Brian Higgins and Karen Reed about this, what some people call a sort of love triangle, because there was something happening between Karen and Brian. There was communications, there was a kiss. And we know they were all at the Waterfall that night. So I want to walk through some of the video and text messages from that night to sort of paint a picture, a clearer picture of what was happening. And we begin at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. It's around 10:54. And in this video, you'll see when Karen and John enter together to the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Because what I want to do is sort of make sure you understand who's who and where they are. So you see John, you see Karen as they are walking in. But as they walk in, watch what happens. John goes to the right, Karen goes to the left. John is going to the right and greets Brian Higgins with a hug. Karen Reed completely avoiding Brian Higgins at the Waterfall, going around the other way. That's at 10:54 that night. At 11:32 that night begins two text messages from Brian Higgins to Karen Reed. And well. Neither one of them were responded to by Karen Reed. Now, let's skip ahead a few more minutes. It's 11:47 p.m. You have Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. They're doing what some have called shadow boxing or play fighting, or perhaps preparing for what was going to happen that night. And this is the little back and forth. It is what it is. Everyone can interpret it the way they want to interpret it. They're not really punching each other, but they are squaring up in that moment. Now, let's move ahead to 11:48. And at 11:48, we'll be able to identify where everyone is at that moment. And I want you to see where they are so you're able to follow them in the next few minutes, which are very significant, at least according to the defense and their theory of what happened that night. And as we see everyone, you see Brian Albert, keep an eye, see what he's wearing, Brian Higgins, and you've got Karen Reed right there, close to Brian Higgins, but I believe she has her back to him, and there is John O'Keefe. Now, let's move forward to 11:57. This is the moment where you'll see where Chris Albert, Brian Albert's brother, grabs Brian Higgins' arm. And this is as everyone's getting set to exit. And here we'll be able to identify him. Chris Albert grabbing Brian Higgins' arm, and there you see Brian Albert is also right there. They're all getting ready to go to 34 Fairview, okay? Now this is the big one, which is in the same minute, 11:57, Brian Higgins gesturing towards the bar before leaving, and that's where Karen Reed and John O'Keefe are. And the defense made a big deal about this. Like, what is going on? Why is he doing that? What is that pointing, that gesturing? What exactly does it mean? And that's something the jury's, and there he is kind of waving, come on, come on, come on, come on, as they're leaving the Waterfall heading to 34 for Fairview. And then there's one more communication. And that communication, as he leaves, 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgins sends a text message, not to Karen Reed this time, but to his friend, John O'Keefe. You coming here? You coming here? So what exactly does that mean? Is that a friendly invitation? Is that a setup? Is it an ambush? Back with us, our trial insiders, Joseph Krowski Jr., Margaret McLean, we've got Peter Ellikin, and Nick Rocco. This is a big little deal here. Wasn't a part really of the first trial. Nick, was it? I don't remember this being a part of the first trial.
I mean,
in this manner.
No, not in this manner. But there's also an additional portion to that Waterfall video that also stands out, and that is 2 separate times Brian Higgins actually calls Brian Albert to the side, whispers in his ear something, then they look around and they turn around and they see John. So that also, I think, should be pointed out in court as well, if there is any type of evidence they can bring in again on another witness. But when you see Chris Albert viciously grab his arm, that's not to say, hey, bud, we're going to my brother's house. That's stop what you're doing right now. You know, we're not doing this. And then you see Brian Higgins, he's pointing outside. He's waving on, he's pointing outside. He's like, let's go, we're going outside. So when you put those 2 frames together, you can actually see at some point John O'Keefe notices it, kind of does a little shuffle dance like, oh, what's going on here? And then to get that text message at 12:20, Brian Higgins is already at 34 Fairview Road at that point. And then that text message comes to John. So, you know, something's in the works there.
I disagree. I think the defense is grasping at straws here because, you know, it's 2 guys fooling around. We see that all the time in bars. And there's nothing, a big hug. So you're telling me now he's going to go and, oh, let's conspire, let's bring him to the house, beat him up, throw him out in the lawn. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, been texting your girlfriend for 2 weeks. Big hug.
You know, it was Karen who pursued it. I listened
Takes
to those
2 to tango,
texts.
though, does it not?
It certainly does, but the way I read it, she was pursuing that, and he was just kind of playing along with it. I don't think Higgins had any motive to murder John O'Keefe or beat him up over it. Or to even beat him up.
But to beat him up.
Okay,
Yeah.
so look.
I don't buy that.
If we're talking about having some alcohol in a heat of a moment situation, 99.9% of bar fights happen in the bar or out in the parking lot.
Albert stopped it.
2 law enforcement officers aren't going to conspire to invite John O'Keefe back to Brian Albert's house where he's having a birthday party for his son with approximately 10 witnesses to then premeditate and beat him up there. The problem with Brian Higgins is we keep viewing him through a prism of suspicion. He hasn't even testified in this case. Last night's bombshell was that he had said he had moved cars. We looked at video from the Canton Police Station. They said he didn't move cars. It took about 12 hours for X to debunk that, showing a car actually being moved by Brian Higgins. We saw him in the hallway, and it was called an alibi. Sergeant Good, a police dispatcher, not civilian, was at the police station. Would Brian Higgins get in a fight involving a lot of blood and go and present himself and go into the dispatch room and talk to Sergeant Good from the Canton Police Department? Makes no sense.
Maybe if he didn't have any blood on him.
It's a reach beyond reach.
The fact of the matter is that he wouldn't do it in the bar or in front of the bar out in the public with loads of witnesses. They could have been back at the house, and it may not have been planned. It may not be, I'm going to beat him up, but they had words between them, and then there's some shoving, and maybe nobody's saying that this was an intentional murder, I'm going to kill him, but something like that, fueled by alcohol, back at the house, and there is this kind of
Where's your
triangle.
witness? Where is your witness?
Well, we don't really know. Well, the people in the house, obviously, we're going to cover up for him. All the friends, all the relatives here. And the bottom line is we don't really know with the third party, you know, culpability. We don't know because of the way the investigation was handled. You have a body in front of a house where somebody's dropped off to go in the house, and the police don't even investigate in the house, and then they turn around and go, you see, you have no evidence. There's no evidence of any fight in the house. Of course not. The police did not do a good job, and then we have all the tampered with evidence, the phones that are thrown out, the videos that are tampered with definitely in the inside the garage where people are fading in and out of the picture.
Maybe it's just Occam's principle. The simplest explanation is the truth. When you have Karen Reed's car damaged, missing 15 to 20% of the taillight, there is a debris field exactly where she expected.
Loads of searches didn't find it. The first
John O'Keefe to be. The
15 to
CERT team was
20%?
there, secured that scene, before Proctor or Buchanan ever made their way to 34 Fairview.
Joe. The whole taillight was missing.
The problem is one side has facts and evidence, the other side has surmise and speculation.
Where is it?
Confessions are evidence.
It wasn't a confession or they would have arrested her, Joe.
DNA is evidence.
Joe,
That's evidence.
Joe, if this was your client and they were saying that your client hit John O'Keefe and they didn't search that house, what would you do?
I would have never gotten a search warrant. It was my,
No,
if it was
what would
my
you do
client,
as a defense
I would have
attorney?
tried it straight up, reasonable doubt. I wouldn't have embraced this far.
But they didn't search the house because there was family
theory.
ties to Michael Proctor, and he was the lead investigator on this case. They used leaf blowers and
Those
solo
ties are
cups.
so overblown.
Come on.
Sarah Levinson, all
in the morning, there was only a couple of inches of snow on the ground. They used leaf blowers, and they 0.8, and they used leaf blowers. They couldn't find anything, and then lo and behold, and then they do a second search,
No, they
and
did
then
find.
lo and behold,
You
at the
gotta know
end,
the facts.
later on.
They found the cocktail glass in the leaf blower. They were actually applauded by a professional
And they
audit.
found none of the tail light. They found none of the tail light.
They wanted the audit.
They
wanted the audit. They got the audit. They don't like what the audit said. So now they
question for you.
hoo-ha the
If
audit.
John O'Keefe
They
got
wanted
struck
the
on the
federal
lawn,
investigation. It came up donuts.
If he got
Now they don't
struck
like
on the lawn
facts.
when there was 0.8 inches of snow, why was the blood on top of the snow?
What?
Why was the blood on top of the snow if John O'Keefe got struck at 12:32 in the morning when there was 0.8 inches of snow? Why was there blood on top of the snow?
You just said it's 0.8.
Why was there blood on top? That would have melted from body heat, and blood would have seeped into the ground. You have blood. They scooped up out of snow.
John O'Keefe's phone has him only moving for 20 seconds.
Why was there not a patch of grass on the ground? Where's the crime scene photos? There's
80
nothing.
feet in the house.
There's nothing.
The evidence will show that he was in the house.
Quick time out. Good job. We've got some breaking news right now. All right, we've got some breaking news from Los Angeles involving these two double murderers, Eric and Lyle Menendez. The judge has reduced the Menendez brothers' murder sentences, making them eligible for parole. The judge resentenced Lyle and Eric Menendez to 50 years to life in prison. The judge said, quote, "I'm not saying they should be released. It's not for me to decide. I do believe they've done enough in the past 35 years that they should get that chance." The brothers now eligible for parole under California's youthful offender law because they committed the crime under the age of 26. The parole board must still decide whether to release them from prison. They have spent 35 years behind bars, and I do believe the governor has to agree. A lot of pressure on someone who wants to be president. Is he going to sign the papers to release two convicted double murderers who shot their mother after reloading the gun? Okay, that's the breaking news. We've got much more here from Dedham, Massachusetts. Questions, comments, theories from our live studio audience.
When the defendant was speaking to the first responder, the woman, were you there?
Yes.
Did you hear or do you remember the defendant saying anything to the first responder?
Yes.
What did she say?
She told the first responder, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
When she told the first responder, I hit him, how did you react?
I was like startled, kind of like, what are you saying? What are you talking about?
Did you say anything to the defendant?
I think after the second or third time she was saying it, I was like, Karen, like, what are you saying?
Welcome back to Dedham, Massachusetts, and our coverage of the retrial of the century. That's the alleged confession by Karen Reed that Joe Krowski was talking about. That's direct evidence in a case. That's not circumstantial, that's direct. That is an alleged confession if you believe it. Okay, this is the part of the program where we go to our live studio audience, and Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is with them. What questions, what comments do they have tonight, Matt?
It's a feisty crowd here in Dedham, Massachusetts, just feet from the courthouse. They're raring to go, aren't you? I have Diana Lee from Berlin, and you watched the first trial, like most of you guys here, right? What is your question for Vinnie and the panel?
I sure do. So we talked about facts and evidence and proof a few minutes ago. My question is, the federal investigation is over. Where are the receipts?
Well, we saw over 3,600 pages handed over to the prosecution and the defense team, but also the defense was under subpoena to hand over all of their evidence to the feds. So from what I understand, that's what is over. The subpoena of the defense team to hand anything over would be what's over. We don't know necessarily if the whole federal investigation is over as a whole, because we don't know who the target was. We don't know specifically if it was anyone in the Karen Reed case that was the target of the federal investigation, or if it was someone higher up the command. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wait to see what happens either in the next few months or a year to come to see if this case is actually over.
It's over, okay? So the only it's over. Leah Foley, essentially, the implication of her comment was, it's over, when she took over that office. She said, their only jurisdiction that they had was to oversee whether or not there was civil rights violations, i.e. police corruption. They presented witness testimony to a grand jury. They brought in forensic evidence. They brought in cell phone extractions. If they were going to hand down an indictment, it would have been done a long time ago. The investigation is over. It's fantasy land to think otherwise.
All right, Matt.
All right. Tell us where you're from and what your name is.
My name is Charles. I'm from Boston.
All right. So you watched the first trial as well. What question do you have for the panel and our guests?
So my question is, if you guys were the judge, would you have thrown the case out?
No. If I was the judge, would I throw the case out?
Yes.
Absolutely not. I think Judge Cannone is doing an excellent job, and I really do. Think of how hard this case is. She's dealing with a lot of pressure from the media online, and I think she's been handling herself, and I think she's ruled in favor of both sides. I think she has been. I know you disagree, Nick, but I think she's been very neutral. And no, you wouldn't throw a case out if you're the judge like this, where you've got it's going to be in the jury's hands.
One of the most disappointing aspects of this trial is watching licensed lawyers refer to Judge Cannone as Auntie Bev or Judge Bev. As the defense attorney that's practiced in this county for more than 20 years, you can poll every defense county south of Boston, and they will tell you she is the preferred choice to go in front of. They identified a dog bite expert 6 weeks into trial in trial 1. She let them have it. I know sometimes people don't like the tonality of some of her comments or her size, but they're trying her patience. But to a legally trained expert, she has been absolutely favorable to the defense in the way she's tried these two cases.
You can't say that with a straight face.
Absolutely.
You cannot say she's been favorable to them. How come every time the defense wants a Dauber hearing on the Commonwealth's experts, no, they're good. They can just come in and say whatever they want. But when the defense brings a witness in, yep, voir dires, bring them in, fly them all in, keep paying to have them come here. Why is that?
The appeals court, the SJC, the United States Supreme Court have all looked at her work. And here we are.
That's about polling the jury. That's not about the bias in this case towards the defense or the prosecution.
Give me a specific legal ruling on a specific witness that you have a problem with.
Well, I just told you, just the fact that every defense witness that they brought in, they want the Commonwealth wants a voir dire, and Judge Bev grants it to them.
Okay, let's get to another comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have Lindsay from Swansea. What is your question?
So we have heard over and over that when the paramedics, the EMTs, the police officers were at the crime scene, they heard Karen say, or there were a few that heard Karen say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Now, when they were around the body and people were trying to do CPR and all these things, we now know from the meteorologists that there was only maybe max 4 inches of snow.
Enough to track a cat.
Enough to track a cat. So at this point, we know if you live in Massachusetts, there's going to be footprints everywhere. You are riling up that snow. How did they miss 46 pieces of taillight when people are running around trying to save him and they see nothing? You see nothing.
I would say it's an impossibility when there's less than an inch of snow, and they're searching. These guys are experts. They're professionals. They actually have a leaf blower to clear that, you know, half an inch of snow, whatever. They find nothing, and then they search it a second time, and then later on in the day, after the car's in their custody, lo and behold, there's loads of pieces that they endlessly find, you know, when there's loads of snow, and you can even see it from the road. And it's just, I mean, that's really, that is not evidence, and that's not a decisive factor.
Matt, we have time for one more quick comment. One more quick comment.
All right, what's your question and what's your name?
My name's Tina.
Tina, what's your question?
So Karen backed into John, right? It took an instant. Hit his arm. He had all of these lacerations within an instant. How did that happen? Did it explode? Did the taillight literally explode on his arm to cause all of
Margaret, I'll give you 5 seconds to answer that.
One more question.
I would say that lacerations, yes, caused by the glass that he was holding possibly and the taillight. It's very sharp, those plastic pieces.
Polycarbonate does not.
All right.
I think it looks sharp.
Big thank you. Big thank you to Nick Rocco, Peter Ellikin, Margaret McLean, and of course, Joseph Krause Jr. When we come back, something else you need to know tonight.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV. As Sean Diddy Combs faces a federal jury, Court TV's Kelly Craft is live from New York.
It was an emotional day in court.
With every development, the Diddy sex trafficking trial. Live updates on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board and what's brewing in the world of crime and justice. Day 2 of Diddy's sex trafficking trial, and what a huge day. His ex, Cassie, taking the stand. Court TV crime and justice reporter Kelly Craft is at the courthouse and has the latest for us tonight.
Hi there, Vinny. Inside this New York courthouse today, we heard from an emotional Cassie Ventura on the witness stand the majority of the day. She's very pregnant, 8.5 months pregnant. At times, she had to wipe away tears as she recounted the freak-offs, saying she hated taking part of them, and she had to use drugs to get through them. She described in graphic detail the sessions, how they would begin with baby oil, then move on to other activities, then eventually intercourse, as Sean Combs sat in the corner and watched. Sean Combs wearing the same outfit as yesterday, interacting with his defense counsel a lot while Cassie was on the stand, jotting down notes and passing them to his attorneys. Inside the courtroom, members of his family. Now, this is some video of his children as well as his mother leaving court. This was right after Tuesday's proceedings. While Cassie was on the stand, she testified she needed to be on drugs for every single freak-off session. While on the stand, she testified that Combs first proposed the freak-offs after he began physically abusing her. After the first time, she said, "I was high, so there wasn't much feeling, a mixture of dirty and confusion. I was humiliated." She also said the freak-offs were very choreographed. They happened in hotel rooms around the world: New York City, Atlanta, LA, Miami, Turks and Caicos, and Ibiza. Aliases were used at the hotels: Jackie Starr for Ventura and Frank Black or Frank White for Combs. And Vinny, also while Cassie was on the stand, the government handed her a binder. Inside that binder, photographs of many of the men who engaged in these freak-offs. Cassie was asked if she remembered them, to name them. She said one of the men's name was the Punisher. Her direct examination is expected to conclude tomorrow, then the cross will begin. Vinny, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Kelly Craft in New York. What a fall from grace. No cameras in the courtroom, but Court TV will bring you all the details as this trial continues in New York. Right now, though, I need you to take a look at your television screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Mia Arias, missing from Lowell, Massachusetts, 16 years old, missing since May 8th. Here's what you can do. If you see Mia, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. You can call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Lowell Police Department in Massachusetts. Let's see if we can get Mia to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.